All right, so we are going to jump into chapter three. Last week we did chapters one and chapters two, talking about what did we talk about? Chapters one and two. I've talked about chapter three twice, and so I don't forget what we did in chapter one and chapter two. Chapter one, we talked more about like the managerial responsibilities um, for conserving costs. And then chapter two was we talked more about like the formulas on how we calculate the food cost. So in chapter three, we're going to talk today a little bit about food cost. We're going to talk about standardized recipes. And then we're actually going to cost out some recipes and get started with that practice. Okay. So what is food cost?
How much it costs for all the ingredients and everything.
Excellent example, Sarah, right? Okay. Um, yeah, Sarah, excellent example. Basically, how much does it cost for all the ingredients to prepare the food that we're serving? Okay. Um, and so it is a variable cost, remember? So variable means that as our business increases, boom, as our business increases, so does our food cost because we have cost to spend more money on ingredients. But if our business is not as busy, we need to also manage and monitor our food cost. The food cost only becomes part of your the expenses that you pay for food only becomes part of your food cost when? When does it become part of your food cost? When it's used. So if I buy a 50-pound bag of flour, hey guys in the back, you're not working on my classwork. Yeah, I know you're doing something else. Either your computers need to close or you can go ahead and go outside and work on that. Okay. So we're gonna buy a 50-pound bag of flour. Okay. Just because we buy that 50-pound bag of flour doesn't mean it automatically goes into our food costs. It only goes into our food costs when it's actually used. So if there's any product that's left over in our inventory, then we don't use that. We don't consider that as part of our food cost. Okay. So in this formula that you see here, this is the basic way to calculate our food cost. Basically, what we call this is calculating our costs of goods sold. So the cost of everything that we have that we sold, this is the way we calculate that cost. So we first start with our beginning inventory. And then when we have purchases for that particular period, we're going to add that dollar amount to the dollar amount of our beginning inventory. And that's going to give us our total available inventory. Okay. That's our total available inventory. That's all the money, all the ingredients we have available to us to make the ingredients, the items that we're going to sell. Okay. Then we have to calculate our ending inventory and we subtract that because it's still an inventory. It's not part of our food cost yet. Okay. And that is what's going to give us our cost of goods sold. So if you look at it this way, we have all the snacks that are up on the shelf, right? So I didn't put everything out. I still have stuff that I bought that I haven't put up on the shelves yet. Okay. But I can do an inventory of what's on the shelf. And then before class starts, that's my beginning inventory. And then after class starts and finishes, I can go back and calculate everything all over again. And the difference is the cost of what you guys ate during this particular class period. Okay? It's the easy way to kind of demonstrate that. So let's do a couple of examples. So we have a beginning inventory of $3,500. And if we purchase $10,000 worth of ingredients during the month, what is our total available inventory?
13.5.
13,500. Good. Now, at the end, I go ahead and count up my ending inventory. I go and count how much I have. I assign the dollar amount based on what I purchased those items for. And what is the cost of goods sold?
11.5. 11.
11,000. Good. Excellent. Thank you. $11,000. So it cost me $11,000 to make all of the ingredients or to use all the ingredients such as or to make all the items like the entrees, the appetizers, the desserts, even the beverages, right? This is the cost of everything that was sold. To put this into context, this is our $11,000 up here. That's our cost. That's how we get, this is the formula that gives us this number, right? Leading up to this moment, I've just been making up numbers out of my head to create this number. But this is the formula that actually gives us this number to put into our triangle. Okay? If we want to know what the percentage is, I have to know what my sales is. And so where do I find the number of how much I sold all my stuff for? What place would I look? If I was looking for the dollar amount of all my sales, what place would I look?
Very bottom. Cost of goods sold.
Not the cost of goods sold. That's the top portion of our triangle. I'm looking for the sales number.
The purchases for the period? Or
No.
no, I'm sorry, not that.
No, it has nothing to do with the formula on the screen.
The
Okay.
POS system?
Yes, your POS, your point of sale system, right? You can go and hit and run a report and it tells you how much you did in sales. And each night you're going to be running that report more than likely. You might be running that on a weekly basis. Okay. And then definitely for the month, you can run a report for the whole month and it'll tell you what your sales are for the entire period. Okay. So now let's go to the next month, March. Why is my beginning inventory blank? Did we not have any beginning inventory?
Because it's a different, like, isn't February have less days in the month?
So February does have less days in the month. But what about our beginning inventory for March? Where does that number come from?
What you had left over from February?
Absolutely good. So our 2,500 ending becomes our new, bless you, becomes our new beginning inventory, right? Because when we close on February 28th or 29th, if it's a leap year, when we open up on March 1st, there should be no business going on, which means there should be no product used, which means whatever we end up with on February, the last day of February, is what we start with on the first day of March. Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out this one. We add our beginning inventory, and what do we get for our total available?
17.
17, good. And then our ending inventory is 3,500. So we subtract that, we get our cost of goods sold as
13.5.
yep, 13,500. Good. Thank you. Is that what you said, Vanessa? Sorry, I didn't hear you. It wasn't quite loud enough. All right, 13,500 was the cost of goods sold. Okay. So if we look at this, comparing February to March, February we ended up with 2,500 left in inventory, right? March we ended up with 3,500. Look how much more purchases. We purchased 14,000 in March. Only purchased 10,000 in February, right? So as a manager, you have to become a detective. You have to figure out, why did I spend $13,500 in March? Is that in line with the budget that I've created? Okay, so is that in line with the budget that I created? And if it is, great. But you'll notice we had $3,500 left over in inventory. That could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. Okay, meaning that potentially maybe we thought we were going to be busy, and then we had a weird freak snowstorm, an ice storm. And all of a sudden we have all this product that we purchased thinking we were going to be busy, but the weather had something else in mind, right? And so it's not necessarily a bad thing we have $3,500 unless that's super perishable. If it's things that need to be used before they go bad, then yeah, we want to make sure we can use those. If they go bad and spoil first, that means I've bought them, but I didn't get to sell them, which means I didn't get any money in return. So the next time you order, you're probably just not going to order as much because you already have some stuff in inventory. And we'll start talking about the purchasing in chapter 5. So this formula right here is your basic overall. This is everything that we sold. Now, if we want to be really specific, we can actually transfer from the bar to the kitchen and kitchen to the bar. So we can transfer food and beverages to different places. So when an ingredient like a liquid is used in something that we normally would drink, is used in the production of a food recipe that we're going to eat, that drink, that liquid actually becomes part of our food cost. Okay, so what's an example of a liquid we might drink that is used in the production of a food item?
Strawberry.
Wine.
Whiskey.
Wine, good. Whiskey,
Beer.
beer, yes. Water, yes. But I mean, water is pretty much already factored into that. Thinking of
Nope.
like something outside of. What was that?
Rum.
Nope.
Rum,
Lemon juice.
lemon juice. Yep. So all those
Orange
things.
juice.
All those things are considered if it's in the production of a food item, right? So if I'm making like a whiskey sauce for my dessert, that whiskey actually now becomes part of my food cost. What about going the opposite direction? What are some things that we eat normally as food that are used at the bar, usually for beverages?
Oranges.
Okay, I'll look for
Fruit.
that one.
Olives, oranges, strawberries.
Cherries.
Pineapples.
Pineapples, right? So those are things that normally come in the kitchen and are considered part of your food cost. But if we send it to the bar, we want to make sure that it's transferred as a beverage cost. So that way we can keep those costs separated. And then the last one is costs that are transferred between different units. So the best example I can give you for this one, when I worked for Chester's Hamburgers, I worked at the store over in Universal City by Randolph Air Force Base. Okay. And so let's say the store on 410 was really busy one night. And they would call over to our store and ask for the manager. They say, hey, we're running low on meat and buns. Can you spare a couple boxes of meat? And so my manager would look at our business volume, how close we are to closing, and how much product we have left over. And they say, yep, we can give you 2 boxes of meat and we got to give you 3 packages of buns. Okay. So then my manager would ask me, David, can you take this stuff over to store 4 at Broadway and 410? And I was like, yes, because you're going to pay for my food and I'll be happy to do that because I get free food that day. So I drive it over and I come back and I go back to work whenever my shift is. So the cost of that meat and those buns has to be transferred over to the other store, the dollar amount, because otherwise that store, they're selling more product, right? So their sales are super high, but if we don't transfer the cost, then their cost is going to stay low. And then if you look at our store, our sales are not very high, but our costs are high because we still have the cost of that product in our inventory. And so you have to do those transfers to keep your accounting accurate. All right, so if a 5-year-old child asked you, what is a standardized recipe? How would you describe a standardized recipe to a child so that they would understand what that is? What's that?
Simple recipe.
Yeah, so how would you describe a standardized recipe? How would you use that how would you describe that to a child so they would understand the concept of a standardized recipe?
It doesn't change.
What's that?
It doesn't change. I don't know.
It doesn't change. Good. I like that.
It's instructions on how to make food.
Instructions on how to make food. I love it. That's awesome. You know what? I just had an idea. I don't know if y'all know this about me, but I love to use AI. Let's ask Google what it would say. So how can I describe the concept of a standardized recipe to a 5-year-old? Standardized recipe is like a special map that makes sure a cookie tastes exactly the same every single time you make it, no matter who is doing the baking. Or a Lego comparison. If you follow the Lego book, you get the cool dragon on the box. If you skip a page, the dragon might lose a wing. Standardized recipe is just a Lego book for food so that the dragon always looks and tastes perfect. I love AI. It's amazing. So yeah, I like that. It's a simplified, I'm sorry, remind me what you said.
It's instructions on how to make food.
Instructions on how to make food, right? And that standardized recipe is consistent. It's always the same. How many of you have ever been to a restaurant before and you're like, hey, is Johnny in the back cooking today? Because if so, I'm going to have the chicken fried steak. But if he's not, I'm not going to order the chicken fried steak because nobody makes it as good as he does, right? We don't want that. We want everyone to make the food the same so that we have that standardized recipe. So consistency is an advantage. What else is another advantage for standardized recipes? Besides consistency.
Cost. Do you know how much it's going to cost?
We know how much it's going to cost. Absolutely. Good. What else?
We know more or less what to order every time we do inventory because it's the same.
Good. We know what to order. And that's a great segue into our product specifications. Okay. So we know what to order. The recipe will tell us what ingredients we have to order. Okay. So, Carla, give me an ingredient that we use in the kitchen, like a very general ingredient.
Vegetables.
Okay, give me a specific vegetable.
Onion.
Onion, good, I like it.
Oh, whoa. Definitely.
Okay, so onion
Salt.
is our vegetable. Okay. You said onion, right?
My first thing is salt.
Okay, salt. We can do onion and then we'll do salt as well. We'll do both. Okay. So an onion, there are different qualities of onions, right? So who can give me an example of a quality of onion? If you're online, you're welcome to type it in the chat too. I'll have the chat open.
Yellow onion?
Yellow, good. So the color, we have yellow. What else?
Shallots count.
Red. So shallots are going to be their own thing, right? Because they're not necessarily an onion. They're part of the onion family, but they're a little bit different. So, oh, I like that. Pearl onions. We have red onions, the sweet yellow. What else?
White.
White
White.
onions. We have green onions. Okay, I think we got all the colors taken care of. What other qualities of onions?
I guess size.
Yes, absolutely. Good. The size. So are they small, medium, jumbo? What are they? Okay. Sorry?
Texture.
The texture of the onion. Okay, yeah. And so the texture is going to be determined probably on the type of onion. Good. Okay. What else?
The aroma they have, their smell, how intense they
Okay,
are.
so the smell.
Could price be one?
Not, I mean, I guess Well, okay, so what would make one onion more expensive than another?
Organic onion.
Okay, so organic.
Flavor?
If it was like transfer from like another country, like depending like on the area it was grown in.
Okay, so I'm gonna say the locale of where it was grown. Good. Yes.
Spicy or sweet flavor?
Okay, good. The flavor. So sweet versus that spicy. One of the questions I ask when I go out to like a burger place is do they use white onions or red onions on their burgers? I prefer red onions on my burgers. I don't like yellow or white onions on my burgers. And so if they say white or yellow, I always ask for no onions. But they say red, I'm all for it. I like that different flavor. Good. Whole or pre-diced? Brian, I love that.
I was gonna say like the gas they release that makes you cry, like are like the stuff that comes off of it that makes you like the stuff that burns your nose hairs.
Right. So that's going to be predominantly based on the type of onion that you order. We're thinking about more so like on the flavor profile and the use in the recipe, right? And so that pre-diced versus whole. How many of y'all knew you could buy pre-diced onions?
They
Okay.
have a section in HEB where like they have like
Yeah.
pre-diced like vegetables when you don't like want to have to worry about that.
And you can do fresh versus frozen, even. You can buy frozen onions. Right? And so all of these things are going to be determined by what? The recipe, right? The recipe will tell me, can I use red onions instead of yellow onions? Okay. If I'm making onion rings, does it matter what onions I use?
Yes.
It does? Okay, I don't know. I would have said no, but
Right.
no, that's okay. If I'm doing onions for fajitas, does it matter what onions I use? Does it matter if I use yellow, white, or red? Can I use green onions on fajitas? No.
Not
Right?
really.
So the recipe will not only tell you what the quality of what you need, but it'll also tell you if there's any acceptable substitutions, right? So let's talk about salt. What are some qualities of salt?
Coarse.
Okay, so whether it's coarse or fine,
Himalayan.
Himalayan, you're gonna test my spelling, aren't you?
It could be pink.
Himalayan peak. Iodized versus sea salt. Good.
It'd be like the seasoning salt, how it's like orange.
Yeah, so maybe we can have different flavors. Good.
Kosher.
Kosher salt. Flaky, good.
There's also pink
Pink.
salt.
Yeah, you got it.
Pink salt, yep, absolutely. Right, so again, that will tell us the difference. If you use kosher salt is I like to use kosher salt because it's less salty flavor than iodized salt, right? You can easily go overboard on the iodized salt, but you can be a little bit more generous with the kosher salt. Okay. Sometimes in my cookies, I like to use kosher salt because it's got the big crystals. And so when you take a bite, you get that real big pop of salt next to the chocolate chip that's super sweet, right? And so sometimes, depending on what I'm making, I'm going to determine what kind of salt I'm going to use. Okay. Any questions about quality? Quantity is basically just well, one of these not on there yet. Hold on. Quantity is just basically on how much we're going to buy. Okay. So quantity, if we're going to buy it in a 50-pound bag, a 25-pound bag, are we going to buy our onions? If they're super special, like right, the pearl onions, maybe I'm going to buy those a little bit smaller because they're only used in one or two in recipes. Whereas if I'm using like onions in my tomato sauce or my soups, I'm going to probably buy a larger quantity of that. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you feel like if like so we're talking about quality, right? So you know how sometimes they have sales where the quality of the item isn't as like great as it could have been, do you think that it's better to get that if you're like in a rush to try to get everything done, or do you feel like it's not as worth it because the quality is the same?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Let me see if I understand it correctly. So you're saying that sometimes there's sales on items because their quality is diminishing, and so you're asking, is it better to buy that or pay for the full price?
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
per se like we don't need so much of it, but the price is so much lower for it regardless.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the item is. If it's something that has a longer shelf life, that maybe we can freeze it and preserve the freshness of it that way. I would say if you have something that's a really good price and if there's a way to kind of preserve that freshness, then you absolutely should while the price is low. I'll tell you, when I was working in Maine in the summertime, every week, every Tuesday, the rep for the company would come by and we'd sit down, and the first thing they would show me is what's on special, right? The things that are on special for them are things that are getting closer to their shelf life. And so they got to move that product before it goes bad, right? And so, he would tell me, okay, we have cantaloupes on special, we have red bell peppers on special. So then I would look at my menu and say, okay, I'm going to do, pizzas on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and I had green bell peppers for the pizzas. Does it matter if I have green or red bell peppers on the pizzas? No. So I'll go with the red bell peppers because it's a cheaper price and it's right there and I'll use it. So your recipe sometimes will tell you whether or not you should or should not accept a substitution.
Well, they do have different flavors.
They do. I prefer red bell peppers over green bell peppers. Our recipes will also. I thought it was funny. Hold on, I'll tell you a little quick funny story. Yesterday, I called on my one hospitality student in my class to give me the ingredient, and she said flour. And so everyone went crazy with all the different types of flour, and she was just like so like shocked. And so I asked her, I was like, "Did you realize there's so many different types of flour?" As a hospitality person, she had no idea. I thought it was pretty funny. All right, so weight, volume, and count. Our recipe will tell us basically different ingredients and different serving sizes based on weight, volume, and count. What primary ingredient do we usually measure by weight?
Flour.
Well, no, in a
Yeah.
finished product. In a finished product, so we're going to be serving it. What is that ingredient on our plate? Meats. Yeah, Brian. Okay, so meats or proteins. So, you order a 12-ounce steak or you order a quarter-pound burger, right? That is a weight of that meat. Okay. Volume are things like liquids. So, what are some things that we measure by volume? Sauces. Okay, so maybe like liquor for the beverages.
Soup.
Soup, good.
Broth. Broth.
Broth, okay, yep, good. So you get the idea. Okay, what about count?
Vegetables. No.
So think about something you might order that has a specific number. What's that?
Shrimp. As in nuggets.
Nuggets, okay,
Eggs.
good. Eggs,
Pancakes.
I heard shrimp.
Tomato.
Wings, okay, good. So things like appetizers, things like that, you're gonna have a count, okay? So let me show you a standardized recipe that incorporates all three of these. So here's my plate. My recipe is going to include 4 ounces, so this is weight, of salad, greens. Then it's going to include 3 tomato wedges. And it's going to include 2 ounces of dressing on the side. That's my volume. So my standardized recipe for the side salad is 4 ounces of salad, 3 tomato wedges, and 2 ounces of salad dressing. Okay. So that is my standard. So that way, if we all ordered a side salad, it would all come out looking exactly the same, with maybe the exception of the dressing. All right. So we are now going to talk about a really important concept called edible portion, edible yield, and as purchased. Okay. If you want, you can draw a triangle. And our edible yield, EY, is equal to edible yield. It is also considered a yield factor percentage. Okay, so yield factor percentage is another way of saying edible yield. Okay. The edible portion is what we get to eat or what we get to serve. And lastly, the AP is what is purchased. Hold on. AP stands for as purchased. Okay, so as purchased. So let's use this example of bell peppers. My as purchased, oh, sorry, let me do the triangle. I'm getting ahead of myself. AP is on the bottom, percentage is on the bottom, and then the edible portion. Remember, part over the whole is the percentage. So, our as purchased, we buy 10 pounds of bell pepper. But then as we slice it, we take the stem off, we take the seeds out. They all weigh something, right? We toss that. So we start with 10 pounds, but we only end up with 8.5 pounds when we're done. Okay. So using our math and using our formula, we take our EP of 8.5 pounds. We divide by 10 pounds of our AP, right? EP divided by AP is equal to 0.85, but we know that as 85%. So they have an 85% edible yield. Okay. So if I'm making, let me see if I can do a bell pepper. It's kind of like an apple, but it's a bell pepper, trust me. Okay. So if I'm making this bell pepper and I'm doing a nice julienne for my salad, okay? If I cut this top off and cut off the bottom so that I have that nice straight, all the same length, right? Does this portion right here, does that just get tossed in the trash? No, what can we use it for?
A sauce.
Maybe a sauce, right? If we're going to puree it, does it matter what it looks like? No, right? And so if we do that, if we make a red pepper sauce out of that, then that means the only thing I'm wasting is the stem and the seeds, which means my yield is going to go up. I'm going to increase my yield. But that's why, like, a lot of times things like potatoes, carrots, a lot of times vegetables that you have to square off to get that nice, really good dice, right? That uniform dice, all that extra stuff, a lot of times people just throw away. But if you're a smart chef, then you would actually use that in some other way, right? To be able to maximize the yield. Okay. So let's look at now. Juliana made a comment earlier about things that are on sale. Well, what if there's a really good deal on 25 pounds of bell peppers? I normally buy it by 10 pounds, but this week there's a really good deal on 25 pounds. So I should probably consider doing that, right? So I buy that 25 pounds. Well, how much will I have left over? That's what we're doing with the EP. So my edible yield is still, my edible yield is still 85%. Okay. So in this case, if I'm looking for EP, I cover that up and what's left over? AP times my edible yield. And what does that equal? What is 25 pounds times 0.85?
21.25.
21.25 pounds. So I know if I buy 25 pounds of bell peppers, at the end of it, I should have 21.25 pounds after I've chopped it up and done everything. Okay. And here's the most important one, I think. Looking for our AP. How much do I have to buy? If my recipe calls for 35 pounds of bell peppers, can I just buy 35 pounds of bell peppers? No, because I'm going to lose some of it in the processing. So if I need 35 pounds, then I have my EP divided by my yield factor, which is, I think it's 41.18. Okay. So that means I need to order 41 pounds. Okay. But I might need to go ahead and order 45 pounds or 50 pounds, right? It may come in 25-pound increments. And so I may have to go ahead and buy 50 pounds. And if that's the case, I've got extra bell peppers. Maybe I'm going to make a new sauce. Maybe I'm going to add some to a recipe. Maybe I'll do like a roasted red pepper, something or whatever, right? So I'll get creative so that product doesn't go to waste. But that AP, how much to purchase, is really important. Okay, especially if you're going to be in catering, because you need to be able to know how much product to order and take into consideration how much you're going to lose in the processing. All right. Let's see. I need to add something to this based on my morning class. Okay, well, let me save this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'm going to label it as two different videos. So the first video is going to be the PowerPoint. The second video is going to be all the math we're going to do.